Hello sewers and welcome. I'm Debbie from Sew Simple Bags. Today I want to talk to you about interfacing. Why interfacing, you ask? Well, when people join the Sew Simple Bags Facebook group, I have a question for people to answer in order to join the group, and it's what is your most pressing sewing question, especially about bag making. And more often than not, people ask for information about stabilizers and interfacing to use, and especially comparisons. How do they pick one product over another? So I thought it would be really interesting to look at a few of the interfacings and stabilizers on the market. And today we're going to look at woven interfacings, and I've picked three for us to have a look at. We are going to compare these three products. I have WovenFuse 2, the what's this one? Oh, it's just called Soft Woven Fusible from Heat and Bond, and this one is perhaps the one that we're mostly familiar with. This is the ShapeFlex SF101. So I've got them both individually as pieces of interfacing, and then I've also fused them to some fabric. So we'll look at the fabric next. Let's just look first of all at the interfacing sheets themselves and compare them side by side. So here is our ShapeFlex. If we put this flat on the board, you can see that we can see some of the trace marks from my cutting board through the fabric. It's fairly light and flexible, very soft, and really basically like if you had a lightweight cotton sheet on your bed, it's a bit like that. And on the reverse, we have the tiny little dots of fusible glue that you can't really see, but you can feel them if you rub your fingers over the back. So that's our ShapeFlex, the one that we're perhaps most commonly used. Then this one is the Heat and Bond. It's called the Soft Woven Fusible, and reference number is, I think, Q2400. And Heat and Bond, Thermoweb were very kind to send me a sample of this one to try so that I could show it to you with my comparison, because I've actually not used this one before. So this one is brand new to me, but I've been pleasantly surprised. If we look at it, we can again just about see the lines of my board, the thicker lines. So it's very similar to this one. Perhaps this one is a little lighter. You can see through, it's a bit more transparent than the Thermoweb Heat and Bond, but it feels similar, except perhaps more flexible than the ShapeFlex. This one compared to this one, I think you can see if I hold them on my fingers, the Heat and Bond, the Thermoweb one, is more flexible and softer and perhaps a little bit thinner. On the back, it still has the same. It has the little bumps of fusible adhesive. So that's our Heat and Bond. And then we come to one which again is new to me. I ordered it this time again so I could make a comparison video for you. This one is WovenFuse 2, and I think for some reason it's an Australian product, but I can't remember where I've got that from. You can buy it on Etsy and a shop called Got Interfacing online. And if you look at it, it's quite different to the others. These ones are a little bit more transparent. This one seems to be thicker, much more closely woven, so I can't see any of the marks through from my board. It's much more opaque than the others. It also has a different glue. Let me see if I can show it to you. I think you can probably see it. Where the others had little dots of glue and were matte on the back, this one is shiny on the back, and it's quite different because instead of having dots, it has a whole sheet of glue. The whole thing is glue in itself rather than having dots. So that is one difference over the others. The fact that it appears to be more opaque and it has the different glue on the back. And when we compare it to the others, I would also say it doesn't drape anywhere as much as the other ones do. So if we compare it to the Heat and Bond, which is very soft and drapey, and then the WovenFuse, not really drapey at all in the same way. In fact, if I had to compare it, I would say if you look at the way it kind of ripples, and you can hear it just fold and crack a little bit when you move it, this one feels a little bit more like a non-woven. Although it is woven, I think it's because of this this complete sheet of glue on the back. It feels just that little bit more plasticky or cardboardy than the others. These two feel a lot more like, just like a sheet, just like a very thin woven fabric. This one feels different. It has more body to it, and it feels a little bit more plasticky or papery than the other two, although it is still woven. So having compared them on their own, let's do a comparison of what they look like on fabric. And I've written on the back so we know what they are. Let's go through them in the same order. This is the Pellon ShapeFlex. Now all of them I bonded to the back of the same piece of fabric, so it would be easy to compare. They're all on the same, and they were all bonded according to manufacturer's instructions, and then left for 10 minutes to cool on my ironing board before I moved them. And I would say, looking at the way they fused, they've all fused perfectly. I can't find any difference. There's no bubbling or wrinkling with any of them, and the edges and everything, they've all just fused exactly the same. So in terms of comparison with the glue, I haven't found any difference. I didn't find that, for example, the WovenFuse, the one with the full glue sheet, I didn't find that it glued any better or worse than the ones that had the glued dots on them. So let's look at how they change our fabric. This one is the ShapeFlex, and as you can see, it's soft, not that drapey once it's actually on the fabric itself, but still very soft and malleable. This one is our Heat and Bond, the soft woven fusible from Thermoweb, and in the same way that the interfacing itself was more flexible, then once it's added to fabric, it feels lighter and more flexible too, for sure. Much more drapey than this one. So this is our ShapeFlex. If I hold it up, you can see it kind of holds up on its own. If I shake it, it will fall. This one is the Thermoweb, and this one doesn't stand up on its own very much at all. Even if I don't shake it, it still tends to just droop. So that one is much softer. This one is our WovenFuse 2, and in the same way that the fusible itself was less flexible, then once it's attached to the fabric, also less flexible and feels a little bit more plasticky or a little bit more papery, feels a little bit more like a non-woven. And when you hold it out, again, it's going to hold perfectly. Even when I shake it up and down, it still stays firm, still doesn't droop. Maybe a little bit there. But I think if you compared that one to this one from Thermoweb, and then back to this one, the ShapeFlex is a little softer than the WovenFuse is. So in terms of how they compare price-wise, I have written a few notes, and basically they all came out at around $5 a yard. The ShapeFlex at the current price I found was $4.75 for a yard. That one's 20 inches wide. The soft woven fusible from Heat and Bond, that one is 22 inches wide and $5 a yard. The WovenFuse, I could only find it in a 6-yard pack. That was $30 for 6 yards. So again, it works out at $5 a yard. However, the main difference with the WovenFuse is actually twice as wide. The WovenFuse is 45 inches wide compared to 20 inches wide for the ShapeFlex and 22 inches wide for the Heat and Bond. Yes, so you basically get twice as much of the WovenFuse for your money if you're buying them at $5 a yard, because the WovenFuse is twice as wide. So having seen all of that information, does it change your mind about how you might want to use a woven fusible and which one you might want to use? I think although the three are similar, they're in fact different enough that you might want to have one of each in your stash so that you can use a different fusible interfacing depending on what you're sewing. My go-to has always been the ShapeFlex, the SF101, but now I've had a chance to try these others, I would definitely add those into my collection as well. The Heat and Bond, because it's thinner and more flexible, I think that would be ideal when you have a product that doesn't need to stand up so much on its own, but the fabric needs a little bit of extra something, but not as much as the ShapeFlex, and because it is thinner, if you're working with a lot of layers, then I think the heat and bond would be a really great option. For example, if you are folding something like card pockets and they needed just a little bit of interfacing, but the ShapeFlex would be too thick, then the heat and bond soft fusible would be really good. Then the WovenFuse, where the ShapeFlex doesn't give you enough stiffness, but you don't want to add a second layer or go up to something which is non-woven, then I think the WovenFuse 2, because it does have that extra stability, probably caused by this fusible on the back, then the WovenFuse 2 would be a good alternative if you wanted to upgrade the ShapeFlex to something a bit more, but not go all the way to something like a Decor Bond or something like that, which is very papery. So there we go, just a quick overview of 3 different fusibles. If you are watching this on YouTube and look in the video description down underneath, you'll find the links for where you can find them all. Otherwise, you can hop on over to the article at So Simple Bags and the links will all be there as well. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you here again soon.